Eyes on Longmont, offering a diversity of topics about our community that will inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Eyes on Longmont.
I'm Eric Mason. I'm Curator of Research at the Longmont Museum and Cultural Center. And I've been a part of Day of the Dead just about since the beginning, back in 2001. It is an event that has brought together the community in a lot of different ways. We're very proud of it here at the museum.
So it first started out kind of like a happy little accident at the old location on Kimbark. We had an exhibit come in called Mexican Folk Toys. I was new to the job. Martha Clevenger was the new director at the time. And we wanted to find a new way to reach out to the Latino community. The museum had tried before then, but not with a lot of success. And so we wanted to make that effort again. And so we started connecting with our own city personnel like Carmen Ramirez.
At that time, Martha Clevenger, who was the director of the museum, and some of her staff said, you know, we want to talk to a few Latino leaders and we want to talk to them about coming to the museum. This is their museum as well as everybody else's museum. And so we gathered a couple of Latino leaders to have this kind of informal conversation as to why Latinos don't come. And so usually the example I give is if you go by a storefront, you're going to see something that attracts you, something that calls out to you. The color of a dress, the pattern, some item in there. And so one of the things that I thought was really nice is we started talking about what would attract Latinos. And Day of the Dead was one of the subjects that came up. And so we started with a very small presentation, actually brought in Ernesto Vigil, who is a local Latino resident and makes toys out of wood, and a storyteller. And then that evolved into making the altars, and then that grew into other community members joining us.
And it really wasn't intended to be a Day of the Dead celebration, but it fell around that time. We had maybe a handful of Latino people that showed up for that program that one day. We had maybe 179 people show up. So when we moved into this new building in 2002, a lot of folks had said, well, are you going to do the Day of the Dead again? And I'm like, again? But they said, no, that was the beginning.
Really the first year we were doing primarily making masks. And then the second year we moved down to the museum, and even in the second year it was still not a really large exhibit. We had displays on the day of the event in the museum's classroom. It was about twice the size of what it had been before. Over the next few years it continued to expand. Now the exhibit takes up our full special exhibit gallery, about 2,000 square feet, and the event fills the entire museum. So having this beautiful Longmont Museum and Cultural Center has allowed us to take an event that could not have grown very much in our old location and turn it into something that is accessible to the entire community and to people throughout the region to enjoy music, dance, traditional food, see altars, paper flower making, a wide variety of traditional activities that occur throughout that day.
Today on our event day, we have over 2,200 people that show up between 10 and 5, and we attract over 6,000 people to the entire celebration, which includes our exhibition attendance and all of our programming, our volunteers and so forth. So we've definitely grown leaps and bounds, but we didn't set out with such a lofty goal. Our goal really was to work with and connect and build those relationships with the Latino community, because that's what we felt was really important to us.
I think the key to its growth and its success has been our connections with the community. From the beginning, this was an event that the museum said, this is not something we are going to put on for other people. This is something that we are going to work with people who have experienced this event in Mexico, in other parts of the world, who it has a profound and significant meaning, and we're going to ask them, what can we do together to make this event significant to Longmont? Every year we get together with a committee that varies in composition from year to year, but always includes people from education, from the Latino community, and from a wide variety of different interested groups. It's their ideas and their input that really shape the exhibition and the event.
I understand that different families in town participate, different artists, El Comité with Marta Moreno, Kena, the schools are invited, and Twin Peaks or Community Montessori, my own little private classes, Spanish with Lupita, and families who are from our town participate. And now we have more and more artists coming and having an altar or leading an activity during this celebration, doing masks or making flowers. So I think it's wonderful to see that is the community, it's not the Spanish-speaking fellows or the Americans who are doing this, is all together, and I think that is wonderful.
You got to really look at Day of the Dead as something that is positive, that is an opportunity to be grateful, an opportunity to remember. And yeah, sometimes it's mixed with tears, but it's also mixed with laughter.
We certainly draw a distinction. We say, Halloween is a separate holiday. It's linked just because of the Catholic origins. Both, they celebrate some of the same things, and they're really linked together. Although they're different days. Day of the Dead officially is November 2nd.
Because it's usually around All Souls Day. So there is that, but it has indigenous roots. It goes even further back. So it does go back to the indigenous roots of natives in Mexico.
It's originally a tradition of the Aztecs, of the Nahuatl people. When the Spaniards came and conquered Mexico, it was changed, but the origin of the tradition is the Nahuatl. They believed that people was going to go to one of 4 worlds that existed beyond our human world, and that depending how their death was, is where they were going to go. If you were a child, you were going to go to a world where you may be going to be continue to be nursed to come back again. So that's one of the worlds. The other world will be, if you were an important person, you will become a god or goddess. And if you were just a regular person, you will become, I don't remember what you will become then. I don't remember this one. I'm sorry. But you wouldn't be a god or a goddess. In the warriors, that's very important. They became butterflies or birds. So when the Spaniards came, and they brought with now a religion, Catholicism. For the most part, we are Catholics in Mexico. This was not allowed. So they taught the Mexicans to celebrate this in a different way, where they took some of the stuff that was traditional to the Nahuatl people, to the Mexicas, and made it a blend tradition. So that's why we took November 1st and 2nd to do this celebration. It was about the same time that the Nahuatls did it, and because of the monarch butterflies, they migrate during this time, and they believe were the souls of the dead people who was coming back. So everything kind of like melted together and created the tradition that we know now as the Day of the Dead.
Days of the Dead, so there's actually 2 days. There's November 1st and 2nd, and November 1st is really dedicated to the children who passed away. And November 2nd is in honor of the adults who've passed away. In Mexico, many different regions in Mexico, they start preparing for Days of the Dead. And sometimes they might be preparing 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out. And so we've kind of taken that custom, if you will, in terms of all the preparation we're doing here. So people ask, well, why are you doing Day of the Dead celebration throughout the whole month of October? Well, we're preparing for the big day. Every year we've tried to do something different with our exhibits so that we keep it fresh. And it's varied from where we've contracted with artists whose work are featured around Day of the Dead. We've worked with Zarco Guerrero. This year we're featuring his 8-foot parade puppet. We've also got Zarco's lovely Katrina sunbathing. This is actually a really important painting that was a gift from our sister city to Longmont. This is by Hector Orozco, who's an artist in Mexico who had met this woman on the street, asked to take her photograph because he wanted to paint her. Unbeknownst to him, like 3 days later, she was killed in an accident. And it inspired him to create this work of art, which is now part of the museum's permanent collection. We also have what we call here at the museum the altar room. That's a very special, dedicated part of the exhibition, and clearly for many of us it's the core, it's the very heart of the exhibition, because without those we really don't have that deep of a meaning. We end with a bang with our big event, and that event takes place every year. We try to make it fall as close as possible to November 2nd. One of the other things that's important with Day of the Dead is kind of that whole sense of the marketplace. During the Days of the Dead, and they're preparing for it, they're going to go buy their food, might go buy textiles, they might be buying things to put on the altar, prepare meals to have at home, or prepare meals for the altar, the cemetery, gravestone. And so all of these market stalls kind of represent what you might see during Day of the Dead. So Day of the Dead is very much also about flowers. The symbolic flower for Day of the Dead is the marigold. You'll even see the yellow and the gold. They're very symbolic for Day of the Dead. There's a very pungent smell to them, and they believe that that pungent smell attracts the souls as they come back to visit their loved ones on Earth.
It's what we call Sempoalzúchil. It's a Nahuatl word, and in Mexico around that time of the year, in November, you have fields. It just grows wild, and that's why it's so hard for me to find it here, because we just have the little pots with it. In Mexico, the scent of the flower is very strong, and is what the Nahuatls believed was the scent of death. But it's a very nice smell in this case.
Also during the Day of the Dead, you're going to have sugar skulls in the marketplaces and also in the stores. But sugar skulls are very symbolic. They represent the skulls represent the soul of the person. They're taken to the cemetery, but they're also made to be eaten. Other things you might see at a marketplace, especially in Oaxaca, is like the coconut masks, the chair. You always would have, the vendor would have a chair to sit on. It's very typical. There might be a plate and utensils sitting under the chair, so they eat during the day. Day of the Dead, it certainly involves a lot of folk art, and a lot of people are like, what's up with all the skeletons? And they're very different from Halloween. Most of their skeletons are really lively, energetic, kind of happy. It's not this scary, morbid thing. And it really is because they're kind of poking fun at life. And they're portraying these skeletons as doing everyday things that they would have done while they were living. So you might see skeletons riding a bike, or playing the piano, or painting, or having a drink, or in the boat, or dancing. During Day of the Dead, you're going to have a stall of just all bread. And you're going to have special bread. So one of the special breads is called Pan de Muertos, which is bread of the dead. They come in different sizes, from really small to really large. And it's a kind of a sweet bread.
So it's yellow and very fluffy inside, and it has seeds, sesame seeds on top, and you dip it in your hot cocoa, and it usually has a little face that represents the face of, it's like a skull, and it's put on the bread. Sometimes the bread is shaped as a body, because what you are eating supposedly is, a little dead person. I guess
And it's very typical to see during this holiday. So one of our vendors who's been donating Pan de Muertos to our event for 12 years is La Panda Bakery. Other typical things you'd see at the marketplace are the textiles, the ceramics, the ceramic ware, the dishes, all the chiles, spices that are very typical for Mexican recipes, especially recipes for Day of the Dead meals. So these Day of the Dead meals might be prepared to be eaten at home, but they also might be prepared to take to the altar or to the cemetery. We've got the Mexican chocolate and the cinnamon, and so this is just kind of a taste of what you might see in the marketplace, and we tried to emulate that. Papel is a word for paper in Spanish, and picado really means piece. They're piecing out and they're cutting out these banners. Papel picado is very popular in Mexico, and you see it year-round. It might be papel picado for weddings or during Easter time. They're made for Day of the Dead. All of those that you see hanging throughout the museum, those are done by the residents over at Casa de la Esperanza, which has been one of our partners for the last 12 years. They are highly involved with the celebration. Their residents not only make those, they make our paper flowers, they make our rice and beans for the event, they heat all of our 40 gallons of milk for the hot chocolate. This year, they're also making the chicken mole. And this year, their children were involved in a special project and painted that incredible Day of the Dead mural outside the building, another collaborative project. La Catrina is a very iconic image for Day of the Dead. You can always identify her because she's the skeleton that always has a fancy broad-rimmed hat and is wearing a dress. And we're gonna have a live Catrina on the Day of the Dead event this Saturday. This will be her 3rd year, and she changes her dress every year. Her hat changes every year, and she just walks around and greets. She doesn't say anything. She'll be handing out skull pops to the kids. You do see arches of marigolds throughout Mexico during this time. They might be the arch gateway as you're walking into a cemetery. I wanted a way for our visitors to interact with what we had in our classrooms. So I took that idea of the arch of marigolds and turned it into this arch of compassion. And so this has been going on for 12 years. People can write messages to their loved ones and hang it on the arch. We've never thrown any of the cards away, and then actually a few years ago, we brought all the cards out and did an installation of them, stringing them all with fishing line and creating 5 different curtain panels. So they were all moving, and as you would walk through, they would start moving with the air. And people were coming back and actually finding messages they had written in previous years. This is what we call the altar room. These are altars set up by people from our own community. We do not tell them how to display their altar. What we do is we offer the space. It's a first come, first served basis. We don't do a selection process. We don't feel that's appropriate for our community. It's how would you select one's loved one's altar over another. We leave the sense of creativity up to them. Common element you're gonna see on an altar. So the sugar skulls are one of them. Candles, because candles represent one of the 4 elements of nature. They represent fire. You're gonna see bread, the Pan de Muertos. Bread represents earth. You're gonna see flowers, definitely marigolds, or it might be flowers of the loved one. Certainly you're gonna see photographs. So every altar you see here is their own expression of how they're honoring their loved one. Front Range Community College, 25 college students have worked on this, and they've chosen someone in their own family or friend to honor. This is done by Marta Moreno, the director of El Comité. They've been a partner with us for 12 years. She's always honored her parents on this altar, and this year she's also honoring other family members with very typical items on her altar from Mexico. This one by Lori Beth Zuckerman is not typical to what you would see in Mexico. You wouldn't see the color black used like this. So it is a mix of some of our own cultures. This particular altar is a really poignant, very powerful representation of 3 mothers who are honoring babies who've passed away. Last year, these mothers wanted to do something different, and they were honoring their babies who were stillborn. These ladies felt comfortable and being able to express themselves. Well, we can do this. We can also honor our babies who we lost. So they came back this year. They've opened it up to other mothers or parents who have lost children. You can write a note and hang it on the string. Last year, they did have these wreaths that were empty at the time. They were hanging from these big branches, and they were asking the public to tie a ribbon on their wreath for a child they knew had passed away. Well, they brought them back, and you can see how many, it's just full of ribbons. This was organized by Kenna Gutrich from Olin Farms and working with the community program for St. Vrain Valley School District. So they've been working with some of the Spanish language students, and you're going to see like all these kind of like shadow boxes, if you will, of different people. Well, these are all done by different students of that program. The teacher brought her students with her.
I always try to set up an altar with my students, sometimes at home, and I have participated at the Longmont Museum doing this with my groups of children or the schools that I have worked for, so that I can share part of what my culture.
So I got to watch them as she taught it as a class, and they would come up and they would talk about the meaning of what it is they had in their hand and why they were putting it on the altar, and then children got to choose where they wanted to place it.
Then they choose what to bring from the items that are placed on the altar, and I explain to them what each one of them represents. So this work of setting up the altar takes me probably a couple of weeks, depending how many times I meet with the children or the adults, because I want them to learn what they are doing when they are doing it and what it represents, how all these symbols are speaking to us, and they are important for a reason. So they choose what to bring, and they know the number of things they have to bring, because, for example, the water, which some books tells us that the water is because the souls will be thirsty when they arrive and they need to drink water. Other books tells us that it's because the souls have to wash when they are coming because they are tired and dirty from the long ways from the afterworld back to our world. So that being said, we need 2 cups of water, no 1, but 2. We need 4 candles, and we need the cempasúchil, the rosary, which is part of what the Spaniards brought with them, usually a saint image. So they bring that, and we work on it together, and we take it down together, and they are, I think it's a memory that they will keep for life.
This is very different. It's for a friend's son who had passed away, who died in Afghanistan. That's a tribute to the soldier, which is wonderful because you'll also often see that too of our military that have died. This is the Delgado family. They live in Denver. They have been honoring their father who passed away in 2004, Lalo Delgado. For several years, they've been doing an altar in our exhibit. Lalo also has special meaning for us. He was our storyteller, and he wore this mask when he was doing his storytelling here. So I remember Lalo very well, very jolly, happy-go-lucky guy, and the painting of him and his wife is just perfect. She sadly passed away this year in May. The family called me up. This time we want to do it for both our parents. I can speak from my own experience after my mother died 3 years ago that I thought, well, I was so much part of the celebration, it just made sense for me to do an altar, and I wanted to. So it was very different when watching people set it up versus when you're actually doing it, because you're reliving so many of the moments, happy and sad. So it was a really incredible learning experience for me.
We offer the altar every year to somebody or many people. And last year I offered it to my father, but it was the first time that I offered the altar to a relative of mine. Usually we just offer that work to our families or to our loved ones or our community or whatever.
Certainly one of the ways that it impacted our staff in a unique and very poignant way was when, over the course of 2 years, we had 2 different staff members pass away. Svein Edlund, our exhibits curator, was killed in a motorcycle accident in July of 2009. And in October of 2009, it seemed entirely appropriate to do an altar in his honor. And we contacted his family. They were extraordinarily moved by it, lent us many of the personal possessions that they had kept, and indeed came to the museum to see the altar, which was put together by staff members. And it was really a chance for the staff to say a final goodbye to Svein, who was, so unexpectedly taken from us.
About 3 years ago, I went back to Juarez, and my tío Marcelo Chavez was my grandfather's brother. And so he was probably one of my favorite uncles. And I got to go to Juarez with all of my cousins, which equals to 5 adult children who all have families. So we probably were a group of about 30. And he has a tombstone that's laid that's pretty about 5 feet tall, and it has a crucifix of Christ on it. And it's brass. So throughout the year it gets tarnished. So everybody digs in, they clean up the crucifix, they make it shine. We spruce up the area, we put flowers. At the end, my aunt, who's still alive, she's 85 years old, mi tía Josefina, leads us in a prayer and leads us in a remembrance.
Our former director, Martha Clevenger, passed away as a result of a long battle with cancer. And again, unfortunately, we said, well, for the second year in a row, it looks like we're going to be doing an altar to one of our staff members. And so her husband, Mark Clevenger, had been involved with Day of the Dead for a number of years as well. And he helped us put on an altar that celebrated her life. It included, many of the things that she enjoyed. It was a very appropriate thing. This was a museum that she loved very much, and it was a chance for us to say goodbye to her, and I think for the community to say goodbye to Martha, who had had such an impact on this museum and on Day of the Dead itself.
I hope that the richness of both cultures makes us grow to be a better community, because I think that although we each lack of something, we can find it in the other. So we just have to be open to it, I guess. So I wish that, our Latino people learn of all the advance and knowledge that you as a culture have achieved through your hard work, and accept that we are part of it. We are part of the community. And our Anglo fellows learn from our tightness and sense of belonging to our families.
We all have someone in our life at some point who has passed away, or know someone who has passed away. And what they've realized coming here and observing the altars and reading about people's lives is that, well, I can share in this. I have something in common with everybody in my own community, and that we honor, take time to pray for, reflect upon our loved ones' lives. It doesn't matter what nationality you are, what your ethnicity is, what your religion may or may not be. And that's what I've been told by a lot of people, that they realize, oh my gosh, well, I can honor my own ancestors in my own way.
So now we have these great altars that are created by people who are of Jewish descent, whose sister cities are honoring folks that were very important in establishing sister cities and establishing connections from Longmont to Mexico or Japan. So I think it really has evolved into something where the whole community comes not just to learn about the Latino community and Day of the Dead, but even to share their own ways of how they honor the dead.
With the museum's coming expansion, adding an auditorium and additional education and event space, we see great new opportunities for the event in particular, but also a variety of cultural programs that we hope to offer around it.
Lo voy a decir en español. Para nosotros, el Día de los Muertos es la oportunidad de celebrar a nuestros antepasados. For us, the Day of the Dead is an opportunity to celebrate those that have passed, pero también es un momento de orgullo, de compartir con el resto de la comunidad nuestro regalo de ser algo positivo en esta comunidad. So the other thing, it's an opportunity for us to share this gift and our culture and to show that we are an asset in this community.
El Día de los Muertos es una celebración importante porque nos ayuda a conectarnos y a nunca sentirnos separados de los seres que amamos y a entender que la muerte es solamente una continuación de nuestra vida. The tradition of in celebration of the Day of the Dead is a great opportunity for us to remember the people that we love and always feel united to them and close to them forever. And it also helps us understand that death is only a continuation of our life here on earth. Gracias.
My name is Rosario Hudson. I'm coming all the way from Fountain, Colorado to the celebration here in Longmont of the Day of the Dead. This has been a custom in my family for many, many years. I'm originally from Mexico City. And I have to say that the displays that are here in the museum, the Longmont Museum, are amazing. I go ahead and walk through and it's like a small little corner of being back home, sharing once again with those people that I will see on the 1st and the 2nd of November. So thank you very much, Colorado. Thank you very much, Longmont Museum, for continuing a tradition that it is a pre-Columbian times. Muy buenas tardes, yo soy Rosario Hudson. Soy originaria ahorita de Fountain, Colorado. Nací en México, Distrito Federal, y estamos aquí el día de hoy celebrando el Día de los Muertos con el despliegue que tiene el Museo Longmont. Quiero darle las gracias al Museo Longmont por permitirme tener un pedacito de mi hogar. Cuando entré es como si regresara nuevamente a celebrar con mis antepasados ese día tan especial que es de tiempos prehispánicos. Gracias.
Madre querida, a Dios te pido te guarde a ti, que te conserve para tus hijos, todos se sienten igual a mí. Una cosita nomás te pido, cuando escuches esta